Okay, now that we have our Photoshop file set up, we're going to go ahead and try to decide on our color palette that we're going to be using for the majority of the sign and kind of test to make sure we have like basic colors laid out before we start really getting into the grime and dirt and everything else, all those other special layers. But this is just kind of like the basic layering be at the beginning. So what we're going to do first is we're going to go ahead and create a new layer. We're going to place that underneath our UV channel, and we're going to name it base color. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to group this into our diffuse channel because this is going to be what we're going to put into our diffuse layer. And so just to keep that in mind, that'll help us organize this as we're going. So say for instance later on if we were making a normal, which we won't be for this model particularly, but we would want a normal layer and then maybe a speck. And this will help keep everything organized for us. So later on when we want to, we can just simply click it on and off to view it or to hide it away. So with the base color, what I've gone online and I've checked out to see what some like retro color palettes that I really liked or found kind of interesting. And so I found some things like this, some samples that you could find online very easily. Just look up different color palettes. You can look up years and color palettes, style color palettes. You can look at paintings, pick colors from those. It just all depends on what exactly your color palette you're looking for. I was looking for kind of a retro 1960s-ish, 1950s-ish color palette. So I looked at a few of these kind of color charts here that I found online, and I picked 5 colors I thought would be interesting for this sign. I also looked at a lot of other signs that had similar things, but these are just the 5 that I picked that I liked that seemed to work pretty well. In my opinion, I kind of got some colors that range in value as well as hue, just to kind of have a variation. So with this color palette here, I'm going to minimize this. I'm going to go ahead and place it in the scene for now so I can use it to pick from while I'm going along here. So I'm going to move it to the top. And then for our base, make sure I get another base color. I'm going to go ahead and start painting the areas that I want to be specific colors. So for instance, this base color here, I'm going to go ahead and select with the polygonal lasso tool. I know I want this part of the sign, which is the major part of the sign, to be that blue color. So I'm going to go ahead and color pick the blue here. Make my brush pretty big. You can either brush it in like this really quickly, or you can do a new fill layer, either way. Or you can control fill it. I just like to kind of go along and paint it as I'm looking at it. So as I've looked at this to kind of see the UVs, you can go back and forth, and I'll show you how to do that here. So I'm going to go ahead and file, save as to the desktop, and name it Sign Diffuse. We're going to change it to a Targa. So you can see what I'm doing. I changed it to Sign Diffuse here and change it to a Targa. And I'm going to go ahead and save it as a 24-bit. Now I open up Maya and I go to my Hypershade editor. I can actually click on the Lambert that's being used for the basic thing here, and I can import my file in to test it. So I clicked on File, I go to my desktop, I pick the Sign Diffuse, and now it's applying that diffuse that I have, and you can see what's happening in these places that it's picking from that color palette that I have left on that the UV. But it's also showing us the UV setup here that we have, so it shows everything pretty much because we have the UV overlay on, so you can see all the lines and things like that and where your lines are at. And this kind of helps as you're going along to use this as well as your texture editor Because if you click on this, it'll actually bring it up here as well. So you can use this to dim it or to brighten it to see where everything is going. So say for instance, I'm going to go ahead and select these faces because I want to paint both of these parts here. I want to go ahead and paint that kind of grayish brown color. So I'm going to go back into Photoshop. And now that I know where those are at, I can go ahead and select those. And the base color channel, I'm going to go ahead and select that brown from the color palette. And I'm going to go ahead and paint it. So now it's painted in. Also a useful tool to see what you're doing. It kind of helps me as I'm going along. If you go to your UVs here and you select the area outside of the UVs, it'll select, you want to make sure you have contiguous on. You want to select everything outside of the UVs, and you want to add a new fill layer of solid color. And let's make it kind of like a dark gray. And you can see that will hide everything over that's not being used in your map, so that you can kind of visually see as you're going along what's been painted and what's not. So let's call this our mask, UV mask. And we'll go ahead and group this into UVs. So that'll help us so that we can see as we're going along what we've painted, what we've not touched. And as we go, we can see what we're doing. So I'm going to continue to paint, and this part right here is of course the part of our sign, along with this part right here. So I want those to be the kind of bright yellow here. So I'm going to go ahead and paint that, our base color here. And I'm going to paint, so go ahead and select this. And like I said, you can be a little sloppy with this because as long as you're getting it within the confines of the UVs that are being shown, it doesn't matter if you paint into this kind of gray area, because that's never going to be shown in your UVs, because that's not being used by your UV map. So that's painted. So I'm going to go ahead and keep trucking along and painting the base colors down here, and what I think would look good for base colors. And I'll come right back with this base color kind of setup.